them a video of yourself?
Because I'm talking about placentas.
I don't know placentas. I don't know placentas.
Oh, well, you'll have to watch the video to find out. Hi YouTube, so it's Elizabeth here again. I wanted to make another video for you guys all about labor and delivery and birth. For those of you who are new, I am a labor and delivery and postpartum nurse and certified childbirth educator, and I have been a labor and delivery nurse for the past 7 years. I make videos here on YouTube under the handle Nurse Zabe. I also have an Instagram if you want to check that out. Today, what we're going to talk about is placenta. The tree of life, kind of the coolest thing besides the baby that your body does to help you make a baby. We're going to talk all about what it is, what it does, giving birth to the placenta, and then what some people decide to do afterwards with the placenta. We're going to get in the nitty gritty of placenta encapsulation and placenta ingestion and what we know about it, what do the studies show, and maybe help you make a decision in what your plans for your birth will be. Let's get started. What is the placenta? Well, if we look at placenta from a scholarly standpoint, it literally means flat cake in Latin, which kind of makes you wonder, were people eating their placentas back then like a cake? Here's what we know. Mammals have placentas, and all other mammals besides humans do eat their placenta. So keep that in the back of your mind for later. Anyway, so it's Latin for flat cake. It's literally a whole nother organ that your body makes to sustain a pregnancy, okay? It starts to be created during implantation and it reaches its full form of creation at 12 weeks. And then it continues to grow wider from 12 weeks to 20 weeks till it takes up about half of like the uterine wall. And then it will continue to grow thicker. As the placenta gets older and older and older, it can have some issues with infarcts, so areas where there isn't blood flow anymore, and that can be one reason why we know that an older placenta sometimes doesn't do as well in labor, so placentas that are 42 weeks plus. And it is one reason why we in the medical community encourage induction of labor at or before 42 weeks, because we know that the placentas do tend to start breaking down. They're only kind of good for that certain duration of time. So your placenta, we talked about, it is that flat cake. It's a specialized vascular dish-shaped organ that is basically made to facilitate maternal and fetal gas exchanges. How can your baby breathe? How can your baby get rid of waste without being connected to the outside world at all? Well, through this placenta, which connects them to the outside world via you. What does a placenta do? We talked a little bit. It does that gas exchange that we've mentioned, but the placenta does so much more. It is freaking astounding. Like, I got some real love for a placenta, let me tell you. So, when the placenta is first formed, it works as an endocrine gland, and an endocrine gland releases hormones, and these hormones help to sustain a pregnancy and also to get your body ready to nourish a baby once it's here. So, it is going to be releasing HCG, which is that hormone that we know when you take a pregnancy test makes it pop up positive or negative. It's going to be producing HCS, which is another growth hormone, just like HCG is. It's also going to be producing progesterone and estrogen, and all of these things help make sure that your uterus stays relaxed, that you don't go into preterm labor. It also helps to ensure that your breasts are developing to feed an infant, and it's going to help uterine growth and uterine blood flow, all things that we need to maintain a healthy pregnancy. So the placenta also has a whole bunch of metabolic functions that we've kind of talked about. It is going to be helping the baby to breathe, to get oxygen. It's also going to be giving the baby nutrition. It's going to be acting as a way to excrete things, and it's also going to be acting as a way for the baby and the body to store things for the baby. We are storing carbs, protein, calcium, and iron for the baby in the placenta. We are going to be excreting baby's waste. It'll come through, and then the maternal kidneys will excrete it. We will be giving baby oxygen through the placenta blood flow. Nutrition will also pass through. So water, carbohydrates, vitamins will pass through and give the baby what it needs to grow. It's really amazing that we have this connection with our baby that we created. Our bodies created this connection to grow and sustain a baby. Fast forward, we have given birth to a beautiful baby. And you're like, yes, that ring of fire, that shiz is done. And it is. But it also isn't, because you need to give birth to your placenta. Now, positives about giving birth to your placenta. It's definitely a lot more passive than giving birth to a baby. Your placenta has no bones, and honestly, it kind of feels good, even if you don't have an epidural. This isn't everybody's experience, but I've heard this from a lot of women, and I've experienced myself. It's kind of a relief. So once your placenta comes out, the contractions don't stop. They definitely don't hurt nearly as much. Again, no bones, no pushing this like giant watermelon-sized creature out of your vagina. But your body is still contracting down. As it contracts, that is when your placenta can separate. So typically we see the placenta being expelled by the body about 10 to 15 minutes after the birth of your baby. Sometimes a little bit sooner, sometimes a little bit later. Sometimes if it's more than 30 minutes, we can have issues with a retained placenta. And if the placenta is still in there, it can increase mom's risk of bleeding. So we need the placenta to come out. And if the placenta is not coming out on its own, that might be when the doctor either helps manually remove the placenta or takes you down for a procedure to remove the placenta. But typically what happens is that about that 10 to 15 minute mark, your uterus contracts, the placenta comes out. The doctor will have been applying some gentle traction on your cord just to see if the placenta is about to separate. And then once it does separate and it's kind of sitting in your lower uterine segment, you will push the placenta out with a nice little push. And then it'll be like, ah. Because remember, there are no bones in the placenta. That's kind of like your last, like, goodbye. And then you know what? I really, really encourage you and your partner to look at your placenta and look at that beautiful organ that you created and kind of take a peek. You're going to notice one side is really, really smooth and the other side's kind of meaty. That meaty side was up against you. The smooth side was your baby's wallpaper for the last 9 months. So, I mean, beautiful. And it does look like a tree of life because it is a tree of life. You can see all the vasculature and all of the beautiful things. You're going to see a nice plump cord coming off of it. The placenta comes out, and while I do encourage you to look at it, your doctor is definitely going to be looking at it because your doctor, your midwife, wants to make sure that the entire placenta came out. We want to make sure that the placenta is intact, that there weren't any trailing membranes or placenta left behind, because those can cause bleeding, those can cause infection, and because of those other two things, and also because of the hormones that are still being produced by the placenta, can also cause low milk supply. So that's why we want to make sure every product of conception is no longer inside of your body. And it's really important that we ensure those things. And then kind of the last thing that I'd like to talk about is aftercare of placenta. And I think really what we know about the placenta and what is so amazing is that culturally, in many different cultures, the placenta is treated with respect. And so in some cultures and in some practices, people will take the placenta out and plant it, grow a tree with those dense nutrient-packed cells that are found in the placenta. There are some places where if you have a planned cesarean birth, you're actually able to donate your placenta for the cord blood that's found inside and all of those wonderful cells that we've talked about. Some people also donate their placenta to search and rescue because they are able to use placentas to help train search and rescue animals. Some people will ingest the placenta, and this might be that they have the placenta encapsulated into tablets or tinctures, or that they will put it raw into a smoothie or ingest it cooked. I hear it tastes a lot like liver. It functions similar to a liver in its properties. The reason behind the ingestion of the placenta is because there are two thoughts behind it. One, that it can decrease your risk of postpartum depression because of all the hormones that are present in it. And two, because of those stores of iron that we talked about, that it can help with postpartum anemia or low iron. There's not a ton of studies on this. Most of what we're hearing is anecdotal. The studies that have been performed do not show a significant decrease in postpartum depression or a significant increase in postpartum iron stores as compared to just taking an iron supplement after delivery. But if encapsulating your placenta, ingesting your placenta is something that you want to do, there are some things to keep in mind. One, you want to make sure, because we are dealing with human tissue, that the person you have handling your placenta has been thoroughly trained, has experience, because you really want to be careful about giving somebody your placenta who's not sterilizing things well in between clients, letting it sit out, things of that nature, because this is human tissue and it will decay. Something else that's really important to keep in mind is that the hospital often has a policy that the placenta needs to be out of the hospital within about an hour. We don't have the capacity to store a placenta and then send it out, so it needs to be kept on ice and gotten out of the hospital pretty quickly. Typically, whoever is going to be encapsulating or containing your placenta for you will make sure that they come and get it pretty quickly. So however you choose to deal with your placenta, if you're like, gross, don't want to see it, don't want to think about it, or if you're like, this is beautiful, I'm going to encapsulate it and take it to perhaps help with postpartum depression or anemia, even though studies don't really support that. Anecdotally, there is some support there. I think that's fine. I think making sure that we are appreciative of other people's experiences and not quick to judge what other people are doing with the placenta is really important, and creates an open environment where people can share what they're doing and why they're doing it. It's okay if you're like, I'm not into the placenta thing. I can think it's cool enough for the two of us. You don't have to worry. That's everything I wanted you guys to know about placentas. Definitely leave questions down below if you have any, and I will be sure to answer them best I can. Bye guys.